Good evening. My name is Eric Houston, the Executive Director of the Wolf River Conservancy. Let me welcome you all to tonight's lecture, which is part of our ongoing educational outreach to the community. We're very excited about sharing tonight's program featuring Mr. Jason West. But first, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that the Conservancy is hosting our Hike Above the Ghost this Saturday, September 20th. If you're interested in joining us, please visit our website, wolfriver.org, for RSVP and registration information. I would also like to acknowledge all of our benefactors for 2025. They are the Crawford Howard Family Foundation, TC Energy, Bank of America, AutoZone, FedEx, the Hyde Family Foundation, Buckman, International Paper, the Assisi Foundation, the Billy Dunnavant Jr. Family Foundation, Jim Karras Subaru, Terminex, Ring Container Technologies, Brother International Corporation, First Horizon Foundation, and Silvamo. Thank you for their ongoing support. Of course, all of our supporters, corporations, individual donors, and volunteers are critically important in allowing us to deliver on our mission, the protection and enhancement of the Wolf River watershed as a sustainable natural resource. As always, gifts of any size are appreciated. Our work wouldn't be possible without you. Please visit our website at www.wolfriver.org/give. And finally, a few housekeeping details. We ask that you do not attempt to record this program with any device. If you have any questions during the program, please use the Q&A feature and not the chat box. Our Education Director, Kathy, will be monitoring the questions and will ask them after the program. Now it is my pleasure to present to you our speaker for this evening. Jason West holds an associate's degree in military science from Marion Military Institute, a bachelor's of arts in liberal studies from Thomas Edison State University, and an MBA from Purdue University. He brings over 5 years of experience as a general manager in the environmental solutions and sustainability sector. Prior to joining Republic Services, Jason spent 8 years at PepsiCo, where he held various leadership roles in supply chain and industrial maintenance. Additionally, he served a total of 13 years in the Army National Guard, specializing as a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives officer, as well as an explosive ordnance disposal officer. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jason West.
Thanks, Eric. Good evening, everyone. So one of my favorite things to do in the world is talk trash. So I am excited to be able to do that with you guys here tonight. So I am going to start sharing my screen and give you guys the presentation that we typically give to the people that come and visit our recycling facility. So we start off talking about waste, landfills, and dumps of the past and things that used to be. And then we go into recycling, and then we actually give a tour of the facility. And so very cool opportunity that some of the nonprofit partners that we have worked with in the past do every other week. At our recycling facility there too, but this is the presentation that we typically give beforehand. Just to give you guys an overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. So I'll talk a little bit about Republic Services as a company, who we are and what we do, and then we'll go into dumps of the past, solid waste management infrastructure. We'll talk about modern landfills, the design, the construction, daily operations, and then get into landfill gas to energy, as well as the compliance piece. And then we'll talk about recycling as well, what can be recycled, get into the future of recycling, and there's a few exciting updates we have as a company that I'd like to share with you guys too. But first of all, Republic Services, so who we are. So we are a waste and recycling as well as environmental solutions company. So it's funny, the star down here in the corner used to be what our values were. So those were the 5 R's, but if you notice, there are 5 R's that make up the Republic Star. Our values now have been updated, and our values are safe, committed to serve, environmentally responsible, driven, and human-centered. So we try to be environmentally responsible, but one of the biggest things that we have, and one of our last values there, is human-centered. So we do, this is a company that I've worked for that is extremely human-centered. It is a very dangerous industry that we work in. And so life-changing events, unfortunately, can happen every day, especially with the amount of drivers that we have on the road, people working in landfills and our recycling facilities. So we always try to take that into account. And I'm proud to report that our safety record is 29% better than the industry average because of those things. Getting into our business overall, so we have 13 million customers. We've got about 5 million pickups that we do daily. So a lot of people know us best from the big blue trash trucks that you see out on the street. But we also have 65, excuse me, over 200 active modern landfills, 65 of those with current gas to energy projects, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then we operate 74 recycling facilities across the country, and we do about 8 million tons of recyclables every day. So national company, but also international now as well. So we have just recently expanded into Canada as of this year. And we started operating a Toronto business unit as well and planning that international expansion here soon too. All right, so getting into it, what I always like to start off with is dumps of the past. And so a dump is exactly what you think when you hear the word dump. It was a hole in the ground that just about anybody could dig if you had a piece of land, have some people come, toss some trash into it, call it a day. There weren't a lot of regulations. There weren't a lot of things in place to control dumps. Nothing really that would cover up the smell or keep pests or vectors outside of it. And so in 1993, the Resource Conservation Act added what we call Subtitle D, which were the regulations that basically make up what is an active modern sanitary landfill. So groundwater protections, a lot of the things we'll talk about here pretty soon came in 1993. And so these dumps of the past are a thing of the past that, once again, not just a hole in the ground anymore. We run active modern sanitary landfills at Republic Services. And so if you ever run into one of my landfill operations or engineers and you call it a dump, you will hurt their feelings. I just want to let you know that because there is a big difference between a dump and a modern sanitary landfill. So let's get into what that is. So when we talked about dumps and we talked about just a hole in the ground and putting trash into it, think about an active modern, think about a dump as, hey, you're just putting trash directly into a trash can and not really worried about what's contaminated or the nasty stuff getting everywhere or where it goes after that. Now think about it as a fully contained trash can with a trash bag on the inside of it that is actively monitored and protected in multiple different ways. So our liner system that we have in here is 7 different layers. So it goes all the way from subgrade up to our trashy fluff layer that we've called. And before we can ever even put that into the ground, before we really ever start digging dirt for that, there's about probably 4 to 5 years of environmental testing that we have to do and environmental permitting that we have to have. So different wildlife studies, you've got hydrogeologic studies. You can see our groundwater table is down here. So your landfill has to even start, it's at least 20 feet from groundwater, which we're not that close with any of ours here in Memphis or over in West Memphis. But you have to be at least 20 feet from the groundwater below. There's also seismic studies. So Memphis is on a fault line. So seismic studies have to be done to ensure that landfills can withstand an earthquake. And all that's got to ever be done before you even start digging to construct the landfill. So we dig out down to a specific level above the groundwater, and then we start putting in our different liner systems. So you got your subgrade, your compacted clay above that, your 60 mil HDPE or high density polyethylene geomembrane, your leachate collection pipes will go above that, and we'll talk about what leachate is here in a minute. Then you've got your drainage layer above that, another protective layer, and then your refuse layer, or what we call your trashy fluff lift. So pretty much as we put trash down into the bottom to protect all of these liners, we put about 10 feet of uncompacted trash to make sure we're not puncturing these liners or messing up our different protective layers. Each one of these protective layers is rated to stand on its own. So if one fails, then the next one will survive that, and the next one will survive that. The 60 mil HDPE geomembrane just to give you guys a reference, is rated to last in excess of 400 years. So that's as long as the scientists would calculate it, but we're assuming that it would be longer than that. But scientifically, it's been tested and will last in excess of 400 years. And so all of these liner systems themselves are put in there to protect that groundwater and everything underneath it. Leachate. Leachate is any liquid that touches the trash. So it's garbage juice. Hopefully nobody's eating right now, but that's what it is. So if you have rainwater that's coming down and actually touches any of this trash, then it must be treated and collected as leachate. So when we talk about the leachate collection pipes and the drainage layers, all of that nice garbage juice is coming down here to the bottom into these leachate collection pipes and then being pumped over to a storage tank. And we treat leachate on its own. So at our North Shelby and South Shelby landfills, we send our leachate to the wastewater treatment plants at each of those cities. So we send it to Millington up north and then over to the Memphis wastewater treatment plant down south. At our Crittenden County landfill, we actually truck our leachate over to the wastewater treatment plant. So you'll always want to keep those things separated because once again, any liquid that touches the trash becomes leachate. As we build up from the bottom of the landfill, so I talked about that trashy fluff layer, and then we start putting a compactor over it. You can think of a landfill basically as a big construction project that moves every single day. So we'll talk about we'll get into further detail about what the daily operations look like, but you have 100 by 100 area that you're working in every single day. And then the Subtitle D regulations also mandate that you have to cover that 100 by 100 area at the end of each day. So we're building these sections up in lifts. And like I said, it's like a big construction project that's moving. We're building things out of trash, basically. And at the end of each day, we have to cover with 6 inches of soil or any kind of alternative daily cover that we're permitted to do based on the state of Tennessee. So there's a few different alternative daily covers like tarps or some other materials that we can put on top to make sure we're keeping out vectors, pests, disease spreading, insects or anything else that can get into it, but then also to keep down the smell. So that is one of the big things at a modern sanitary landfill is odor management. So really, you kind of never really know that there's a landfill operating near you. That is one of the big things that we pride ourselves on at Republic as well. But that is a mandate now with modern sanitary landfills too. So we build out those lifts. We start coming up as we get above grade. What we'll do is you see these benches here. So we will separate out our rainwater from leachate. So like I said, leachate, you want to get as least of it as possible. You don't want to let your water and liquids touch the trash. So we'll have these areas to let our rainwater come down. And we have stormwater retention ponds and areas and ditches for our stormwater to actually be able to leave our site. We have testing not only for groundwater monitoring. So each of these layers, like I said, is rated to protect on its own. We have about 150 groundwater monitoring wells, for instance, over at South Shelby to make sure that nothing is penetrating and getting into the groundwater. And then we also test our stormwater before it leaves our site too. So before it comes from our stormwater retention pond back into the creeks of the city, we test stormwater to make sure that no leachate or anything has seeped out of the sides of the hill or gotten mixed in anywhere else before that leaves our property. Then you build everything up, build this big structure out of these lifts that you're doing every single day with your daily operations, and then you basically close the trash bag. So you take these layers that we put down on the bottom, and once you get a nice pretty landfill like this, you end up putting your intermediate cover, or excuse me, there's your trash. Your intermediate cover goes over that. Put another drainage layer over that for your leachate to head down to the bottom. Then you have your vegetative cover, or excuse me, your protective cover, and then your vegetative cover on top of that. So it should look like a nice grassy hill at the end, and really you shouldn't be able to tell that there was a landfill that's ever there. So we have a couple of closed landfills around town. I'm not going to tell you where they are if you can't figure out where they are. But also there's some landfills around town that we didn't run to. So if anybody's ever been to Shelby Farms over by the BMX track, you might see a few of these sticking out of the ground, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail about these here in a minute. But these are actually gas flares. So when you think about all that trash and all that decomposing material that we've now put into a bag, basically, you can imagine that gases start to build up. So to protect from fires or explosions, we actually flare off gas, which is collected through these gas wells that I'll show you some detail on a little bit later. And then that goes to a gas flare, which can be burned off in an environmentally friendly way. Once we've gotten all nice and closed up and we've got our gas monitoring in place, our groundwater monitoring is still in place, and we are closing this landfill at that point, there is still 30 years of active monitoring that we have to do at that site. So once we've stopped taking trash, another 30 years, we have to have a crew there that monitors not only the gas flares and make sure to tune the wells so that they're pulling significantly from the hill and making sure that gas buildup doesn't cause problems, but also the stormwater retention, making sure that still nothing's leaching into the groundwater. So they're actively monitoring the groundwater monitoring wells, and then also just keeping up with the grounds in general. So you can imagine there's a lot of grass to cut when you got a hill that big or a few hills that big. So keeping up with the property after that actively for 30 years, and then there's another 20 years of passive monitoring after that. So once again, for 50 years after one of these landfills closes, we are still responsible for the monitoring of that, which is why these daily practices are so important as well. Just to give you a real life picture of what a cell looks like before we ever get started or before we ever put trash into it, this is the top of those layers that I was talking about earlier. So this is actually the cell that we're in over at our South Shelby landfill right now. But you can see the leachate collection pipes. There's a little bit of plastic over it to keep the rainwater from getting into there right now and to make sure to separate that. But before we ever put a piece of trash in the ground, the state actually has to come out, inspect the cell, and make sure that everything's good to go, everything is up to code before we ever start using it. So while we're constructing one of these cells, which can take 2 to 3 months, we will have a quality control person there on site, as well as our engineers there on site, to make sure that everything's progressing to plan. The plans are being followed so that when the state gets there, it's really just them checking kind of the top lines and making sure that everything's good to go. And then we start filling from this side over here, put in that trashy fluff lift and start building our structure basically. And here are some landfills that are further along. So I talk about that working face and that working area. So you can see this is a nice, pretty one with those benches that I was talking about to help protect the rainwater, which I probably didn't get into enough here a little bit ago. But as we're building up, you're building those benches to keep the rainwater from flowing down too quickly and causing erosion. So you'll have your stormwater letdown pipes over here. But what we're trying to do is collect that stormwater on each of these benches, get it through the letdown so that can go to the ditches and go to the stormwater retention pond so we can let that off. But those benches stop it from just coming down and causing ruts and getting down to trash. And then we're building that out. All the way up here at the top is where the active working face is. So they're probably getting ready to be done with this one here pretty soon. This is one of our closed landfills in Atlanta. So I talked about the monitoring that has to go on 30 years and then 20 years afterwards, the basically 50 years of monitoring that has to go on. So rather than putting the vegetative cover over the top, they put the protective cover on, and then they put solar panels onto the landfill. So all of that monitoring, everything else that has to go on, that landfill is now powering itself and providing electricity to those people there on site. And then obviously we'll be able to provide electricity to whoever else afterwards. But it's kind of a neat self-sustaining idea there. When I talk about daily operations, this is what your landfill should look like on a day-to-day basis. So your compactors and your dozer come in the morning. They push back your protective cover. So over here is the trashy dirt, or the dirty dirt is what we're calling. You're pushing that stuff off to the side. opening up a nice 100 by 100 working area. Here's the space where your trucks come back to dump, and your dozers push that back to your compactor. Your compactor is making trips over your trash to compact that down. And so not only does that help us build that structure, but what we sell at a landfill is airspace. So we're only permitted to go up to a certain height. So let's say 370 feet, for instance, as much as we can fit into that landfill is as much as we've got. So we're basically selling the airspace at that point. So not only do you want that compactor going over things and packing them down for structural integrity, but also just for the efficiency of the landfill as well. So daily operations, let's see, this is probably like a 5-truck working face here. So you see the trucks backing in and out, dozers will push back to the compactor, compactor compacts it down. End of the day, or excuse me, we've got dirt operators running our clean dirt over here. And at the end of the day, what they'll do is push this clean dirt and some of the dirty dirt back over it. And that will cover it up for the rest of the evening, keep the pests out, keep the vectors out, keep the smell down. And the next morning you come back in and do it the same way up until you get to a landfill that looks like this. So this is actually our Crittenden County landfill over in West Memphis, Arkansas. You can see here we had just actually finished on the top, so that vegetative cover hasn't sank in yet. Our maintenance shop is down over here. Here's our scales and our scale house. But if you look over here, this is our active working face at that point. So built a road going all the way around. This is where the trucks will actually dump. We've got some litter fencing there to keep litter from going out, which is why you see the nice green areas over here. And I always say, so my supervisor, who's now the supervisor at the recycling facility, loves this picture because he was the operations supervisor when we took this drone photo of Crittenden County. And then our leachate tanks are here. And you can see here's where the truck comes, and that actually takes the leachate to the wastewater treatment plant for disposal. But funny story, I was driving, so there is a little highway that's over here. I was driving my family up to Chicago, and we ended up getting taken off the interstate because of an accident. So we were kind of coming around on this road over here. I said, hey, there's our Crittenden County landfill. And everybody in the car was like, where? Where is it? Exactly. You never want to know that a landfill is there or a landfill is operating. And we talked about the gas to energy piece earlier, or at least the gas collection, but this is a little bit more about what those wells actually do and what they look like. So, like I said, all that decomposing material that's trapped inside of that landfill, obviously that creates gases. So these pipes are drilled all the way down almost to the bottom, right above where like our leachate collection sump is, even though some leachate might get into it. We've got some sand pack and a seal around it, but this allows gas to flow into each one of these wells that are going all the way down to the bottom. They feed over to a header. That header takes the gas over to a flare, or now at both North and South Shelby, we have gas to energy plants. So rather than burning it off, which is still the environmentally friendly way to get rid of that gas that builds up in the landfill, we are pumping these over to these gas to energy plants that we have on site, and they are refining that gas into natural gas and actually piping that over to MLGW and putting that back into our natural gas pipeline. So we estimate between North and South Shelby that about 33,000 gallons worth of gasoline of energy a day is being produced by both of those landfills by trash that we've gotten rid of. And I would explain this to you guys, but I don't want to bore you with all the sciencey stuff, because I definitely know exactly what happens in these plants when the science refines this down into the gas that we sell back. But just know 33,000 gallons worth of gasoline a day. And that is landfills. So now you guys know, like I said, we are selling airspace at these landfills. When you toss something away, now you kind of have a better understanding of what happens and what happens to our trash, where it goes, and the protections that we have in place to keep up with it. some things that I actually learned in doing these recycling facility tours as well is, not only does recycling benefit the environment, but when we talk about economic development and businesses moving into Memphis or any other city, the solid waste director said two of the first questions they get are the capacity for water, how much water can they get to their plant, and how much capacity and life left do we have on our landfills. So not only does it benefit us from an environmental perspective, to keep things out of the landfill, but even from an economic perspective, that benefits us as well. And just to let you guys know, South Shelby, we're thinking probably about 30 years of life left at South Shelby at current volumes, assuming that no other permits for cells there on site were given. About 150 years at North Shelby, which is the smaller landfill up north. So obviously, if South closed, then all that volume would be going to North Shelby, which could change the life of the landfill. And then at Crittenden right now, we've got about 4 years left. But I told you guys before, it takes about 4 years of permitting and studies to be able to get things done for even a new cell. So we are actively planning a vertical expansion there now. But once again, the longer that we can keep our landfills good, and the longer we can keep things out of them that don't need to be there, the better it is for us overall. So I use that to get into recycling. So once again, people know us from the big blue trash trucks here around town. One of the things they don't know is that we operate the recycling facility for the city of Memphis. And so I should have given you guys an overview of our Memphis operations as well, which I apologize about from the beginning. But here in Memphis, we operate 2 hauling sites. So where I'm sitting right now is our main hauling site down in South Memphis. We run most of our routes from here. We've got another hauling site up in Millington, where a satellite site where we run about 20 routes out of. And we've got 3 landfills. So we've got our South Shelby landfill right down the street from where I'm sitting. We've got North Shelby up in Millington next to our hauling site. And then we've got Crittenden County over in West Memphis, Arkansas, right there across the bridge. But we also operate the recycling facility for the city of Memphis as well. So we got about 200 people working for Republic that live and work here in the Memphis area. And this facility, all of the single stream recycling, which single stream is everything unseparated basically when it comes to us. So if you live in the city of Memphis, you have a single stream recycling cart, meaning that you can just put all of your recyclables in there without having to separate glass, aluminum, cardboard, all of that stuff at the curb. You put it all in the container, and then we separate it at the facility. So our facility there, you can basically think of a recycling facility as a big manufacturing facility, which coming to this company from PepsiCo was that was the place where I felt most at home after working in plants. So if we take your single stream, which is what you put out on your curb, and the city actually does the collection for the single stream and brings that to us, as well as other cities like Olive Branch and Germantown. But if you take your single stream, that would be your raw material. So your raw material comes to our facility, gets dumped on the floor, and then we take that through our system and we process it. So we separate that into bailable commodities. So we take it through our system, which I'll give you guys a brief overview of here in just a minute. But the goal is to separate that into aluminum, cardboard, plastics, rigid plastics, mixed paper, all of these bales, or all of these commodities that we can then bale, and then we sell those to the end users who refine those and put those back into products. So raw materials, single stream, and then our finished product would be the bales that we've separated those commodities into. We then sell those commodities on the market. And so those are subject to commodity pricing by the market as well. So you'll see that cardboard after the pandemic. So the pandemic, everybody's at home. People are ordering more. Amazon, FedEx, those things are going crazy. Ton of cardboard. Probably about a year after that, I mean, cardboard value shot through the roof. And then maybe a year after that, it legit went through the floor. So went from cardboard going for $140 a bale down to negative $15 a bale, meaning we would have to pay people to get rid of the cardboard at that point. One other interesting thing is that we operate this for the city of Memphis, so we do not own the facility. All of the people inside and all the equipment, that is Republic, but the facility and the contract is actually for the single stream here. So there is a revenue sharing part of that contract as well. So the better that the commodities come in, the more we can separate it and the more pure the product. Of course, that's good for us, but it's also good for the city of Memphis as well. But what's bad is when those commodities tank through the floor like they did, and we ended up having to hold cardboard for a while and pay to get rid of it, until the market restabilized. But that can give you an idea just of how the commodities market actually affects recycling. Because even me, before I got into the industry, it's like, yeah, you just put it in recycle, and then I don't know, somebody washes it out and they reuse it, right? But it's a little more complicated than that. So I'll start off, just talk through the single stream process a little bit, and then give some tips on recycling and what we can do better. But we take our single stream that gets dumped on the floor, and then we have a loader, kind of like, there's not one picture here, but the loader actually takes big clumps of this single stream on the floor here, puts it onto a belt that runs from underground all the way up, which is our incline belt, into the system. There's a metering roller that's going around to make sure we got a nice steady flow going all the way up to the top, where we have our pre-sort people that are standing there waiting to take anything out of the system that shouldn't be there before it gets into our system and messes it up. So number one thing that we'll always say is don't bag it. That's probably the biggest source of contamination that we see here in Memphis, is people bagging their recyclables. Put it directly in your cart. If your thought is, well, wouldn't that make my cart kind of gross? Like, that's kind of the problem too. So clean, rinse and dry. Don't have to wash things out with soap, but we do ask that you clean and dry it. You can imagine like a milk jug that you haven't rinsed out, that you set on your porch in the middle of summer, and like, imagine how that smells. Imagine how like 100 of those smell in the summertime at our facility. So clean, rinse, and dry. Don't bag. Put directly into the cart. Pre-sort will have to take those bags, and even if there's potentially good recycling material in those bags, we still have to toss them for safety reasons. So can't have people opening the bags when we don't know what's in them. We want to keep the health and safety of our people good. So if you've done all this work to recycle and you put it in bags in your cart, it's going to have to unfortunately go in the trash. But it's not just bags that they're pulling out up here too. We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. Shot puts are not recyclable. Bowling balls are not recyclable. Golf clubs are not recyclable. Knives, we can't take those at our facility. It was maybe 2 months ago that supervisor let me know that we had a pistol that came across the line. He did actually have one of the pre-sort people bring it down to his office. Him being a guy who's familiar with firearms, made sure to check it. And there was actually one in the chamber, which obviously was very dangerous if that had gone into our system. But he did, call the police, report that. But there's a lot of crazy stuff that you would see that you would never think, like, did somebody really think that was recyclable? Deer carcasses are not recyclable, by the way. There are some things that once again, you could recycle in theory, but we would not be able to do them at our facility because it would mess up our system. So once again, knives and a lot of metal objects, we actually have a metal container on our site that we call, and then there's a metal recycler that will come pick that up. So it doesn't mean that they can't be recycled. Same thing with things like styrofoam. Styrofoam is recyclable, but when you think of the logistics of separating that out into bales and putting a 53-foot trailer across the road to take a full trailer of styrofoam to refine it into a brick about that big, it's probably not super efficient. So there's some things that, even though they might be recyclable, make sure to check on your cart. If you don't live in the city of Memphis, even though your single stream is most likely coming to us because we're the only provider in this area, but still make sure to double check that you're not putting things in your cart that can't be recycled at that facility. So long story short, goes through pre-sort. At that point, they've pulled out as much as they can that would mess up the system. And then it goes across our screens, which screens is a nice way of putting it. When you look on the inside, they kind of look like big meat grinders. And our OCC screens will take our OCC, old corrugated containers, so cardboard and paper, will kind of float across the top of those, while things like aluminum and glass will kind of fall to the second level where they'll get caught and go across the screens. Glass is heavy enough to fall all the way to the bottom, where we've got almost like a big masher. That's our glass breaker that'll mash up the glass and take that outside. All of the others kind of right above that. So your plastics and your aluminum and everything besides paper products will kind of float along on its own journey. And then your paper up at the top will go through a separate set of screens after that. So basically separating those down into bigger and smaller pieces, trying to separate your cardboard and your mixed paper. And then those things will come back around to a different belt where you've got people there manually sorting through those to try to get mixed paper, cardboard, things like that separated. And then those things will be refined and then baled into different products. So our aluminums and plastics will continue going along their journey, and they will actually go through optical sorters. So the optical sorters will sort out PETs and different kind of plastics. It's pretty cool. It's a high-speed camera that's ahead of the equipment. We're trying to get the material as spread out as possible, so the camera will pick it up, and then that camera recognizes where that plastic should go based on the density. Same thing with the other materials, and it actually has little air jets that shoots them into different containers. Aluminum, of course, is not metallic. So basically, the eddy current is a motor that has reverse polarity. So it's pulling the aluminum down onto it and then kind of flipping it off and over. So it's kind of neat to watch. So it takes the aluminum and basically flips that over. Everything else with the plastics is still going down to its own separate journey again. Aluminum is then taken and put into its own container to be baled. And so your plastics then go through another optical sorter, which does the same thing. Then after that optical sorter, we have the last chance line. So pretty much anything that's made it through the system, whether it's by mistake or it's just residual, which is trash, is going across this last line. We have one person standing there manning that station. So they'll pick out things like PET bottles, milk jugs, things like that, something that made it across and let the trash go by. And then to kind of help that person out, we actually have a robot there as well. So another high-speed camera, but this robot will sit there and pick out those items too. Everything that makes it past that robot ends up going to the compactor. So that's treated as trash and residual and then hauled off to the landfill. And then we've got each of our bunkers full of those separate materials. We've got 2 balers there on site. So we'll take the aluminums and everything else that we've separated, put those into bales, and then load those out. We try to live load as much as possible. We don't have a lot of space at that facility. So we try to take it directly off the line, put those on trucks, and then those are shipped to different manufacturers that will refine them and put them back into products. When it comes to recycling and the tips that we can give, like I said, the biggest one that we've got is don't bag it. So we deal with probably about 35 to 40% residual in our facility here in Memphis. So that's 35 to 40% of the tonnage that we're getting in, we end up having to send away because we can't recycle it, or it's contaminated, or something's wrong with it. So even as you bag, or somebody else does, if a load is more than 20% contaminated and it's dumped on the floor out of one of the trucks, then unfortunately we have to reject that whole load, because it's probably going to cause our system more downtime and backup recycling for everybody else if we try to run it through our system. So can't stress enough, don't bag it. These things, if you focus on these, regardless of what the question is, these are things that we are good to go. If we can focus on these 4 things here: flattened cardboard, metal cans, like we said, rinse and dry whenever possible. So your plastic jugs, so you got your HDPEs here. So your HDPE or high density polyethylene milk jugs would be like your naturals. And then your coloreds would be like your laundry detergent bottles. And then you got a PET here, which is your water bottle, and then paper as well. So these things, good to go on. If we focus on those and this, our stream would be a lot better. Like I said, empty, clean, and dry, and never bag. And then there's some other things that we don't place in the recycling containers. Like I said, some of these might be recyclable, but once again, it's not necessarily about what can be recycled and more about what we can take at that facility. But plastic bags and wrappers, soiled paper, styrofoam, clothing and shoes is another big one that we see. Greasy pizza boxes, so you can rip the top of the pizza box off and recycle that. Toys, food, tools, electronics, and batteries. So we do recycle electronics and batteries, but there's a separate program that we have at Republic Services to do that. So if you go to www.recyclingsimplified.com, it'll actually get you set up with our electronics recycling program. I will say lithium batteries are one of the biggest dangers that we've got at our recycling facility. It is insane how quickly those things go up in fires. And the last 3 fires that we've had at our facility this year have been started because of a lithium battery, whether that be a cell phone battery or either the lithium battery, like a AA battery was one of them. Luckily, we do have 2 state-of-the-art fire systems that are in place there, because you can imagine fire and big piles of cardboard and paper don't mix well. So these systems are manned 24/7. They can actually pick up a thermal signature, and then there's somebody actually operating the hose there and can put out the fire before we even know what's going on. So luckily, the last 3 fires we had, I got an email about one when I was at the facility, and I didn't even realize a fire had started, which was great. But like I said, all 3 of those have been started from lithium batteries. So can't stress that enough too. Construction waste, medical waste, yard waste, diapers, and scrap metal. And so one of the other, like the last big piece that I want to talk about is the myth that plastic doesn't get recycled or that it's really getting thrown away. And so plastic bottles and jugs are recyclable. I am super excited about this one because I just got a chance to visit our polymer facility in Indy and actually see it work in person. But our polymer center, so Republic Services has vertically integrated at this point. So like I said, we are shipping out to a lot of third parties to refine materials and put those back into basically into the stream, have that circularity there. So we now have our own plastics facilities to be able to do that. So we're separating PETs, which are like the water bottles and olefins, and taking them through a process to refine those down into flakes that are then being used back into sustainable packaging. And so companies like PepsiCo, Unilever, Coca-Cola, a lot of those have signed on to take our flakes and to use those back into sustainable packaging. So I'm going to show you a video real quick about our polymer center, and then I might nerd out a little bit more on it because, like I said, I don't know if you can tell, but I do love manufacturing and different processes.
As a leader in the environmental services industry, Republic Services collects recyclables from homes and businesses all across the country. We have nearly 1,000 municipal recycling contracts, and last year processed 5 million tons of recyclables, including 300 million pounds of plastics. Today, our recovered plastic is sold to buyers in North America who traditionally have downcycled it into products like carpet, construction pipe, or park benches. There is a growing need for greater plastic circularity. This creates both environmental and economic opportunity. Demand is growing rapidly for recycled plastics for use in consumer packaging, driving a premium for high-quality, domestically sourced recovered resins. That's where the Polymer Center comes in. Bales of mixed rigid plastics from our recycling facilities will be transported to a Polymer Center for advanced sorting and secondary mechanical processing. Initially, we'll be focused on recovery of 2 primary plastic streams, PET and olefins. Bales of PET and olefins from our recycling facilities arrive at the Polymer Center. Wire is automatically removed, and bales are broken apart through a process called rough grind. Optical sorting machines check for contaminants, then send the PET and olefins to the respective streams. First, we'll explore the PET process. PET bottles and their attached caps and rings are directed through a shredding or grinding process, which reduces the whole bottle into flakes. These flakes enter a tank of water. PET is heavier than water and will sink. The cap and ring olefins are lighter than water and will float. This process allows the two materials to separate. The cap and ring flakes are removed from the PET stream, cleaned, dried, and packaged for sale to customers separately. The flakes then go through several steps of friction washing, a caustic-based hot wash that removes any contaminants like beverage residue or label glue. Next, the PET flakes undergo a two-step drying process. First is a mechanical spin dryer, followed by thermal drying, which adds hot air. The cleaned and dried PET flakes then go through another optical sorting process to remove primarily green PET flakes. From here, PET flakes are packaged into super sacks for sale to manufacturers. The second stream of resins processed through the polymer center is olefins. Olefins also go through a series of optical sorting machines, which separate by color and type of plastic. This enables resins to be recycled into new packaging of a similar color. The final step in the olefin process produces color-sorted bales. These will include white, yellow, red, and more. To complete the circle, recycled plastics going through this additional processing are remanufactured into consumer packaging, like new water bottles and detergent jugs. Through our polymer centers, we're enabling greater plastic circularity, helping to create a more sustainable world.
So, I was saying the company is opening 4 of these total. So the first was opened in Las Vegas in 2023. Unfortunately, the company would not send me to Vegas to see that one, but I did get to go to the one in Indy that opened earlier this year, and actually get to see the process, see the facility, which really is state of the art. Very cool. And then another one opening in Pennsylvania, and then one in Colorado after that. So very neat. And like we said, just kind of completing that circle and vertically integrating by the company. But other than that, I am finished with my presentation. So we can open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason. We've got 4 questions. Before I read those off, I have some objects I'm gonna, for everyone's benefit, I'm gonna hold them up. Can you see me on camera?
I can. Let me go ahead.
Okay.
Yep, there we go.
I have a few plastic objects which I always wonder about. So here's the lid to a plastic thing. Recyclable?
Good.
Yes. Okay. I've got a plastic picnic plate.
If it's used, I would stay away from it. I'd probably not recycle that.
This if it were clean and not dirty.
If it were clean, I think we're good to go on that one too.
Okay. This is the lid to like a storage.
Like a food storage container?
Yeah.
Man, that's a good one. What does the number say on that one?
Let's see. I think it says 1. Well, then that would be
yes. Nope. Yep. So as long as that one's clean, we're good.
And then finally, plastic. This black plastic, which is a mushroom container.
I would say yes. Once again, is there a number on that one?
1. PETE.
Good. Yep.
And then I've always wondered about aluminum pans.
So aluminum, now cans, yes. The cooking materials, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So any kind of like aluminum foil, like those things get shredded up. And so, it's not really going to be worth much, like from a recycling perspective.
Okay. So
cans though, absolutely.
Cans, yes, but not foil.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, like the foil based products, like the foil pans that you would use to put a turkey in, or, kind of hold those foods, those typically don't hold up very well.
Okay, thank you. Well, now that helps me for sure. And I hope it.
Now, one of the easy things too is you don't have to remove bottle caps from like your PET, like your water bottles and stuff like that, or Coke bottles. And you don't have to remove the labels on them. Like there's a whole process to make sure that those are refined down, so you don't have to worry about stuff like that too.
Okay. All right, we've got a bunch of questions. Here's the first one. Can you talk at all about the economics of the gas to power process? Is it a break-even proposition or profitable?
So yeah, the gas to energy sector is one that, I mean, it's there's a lot of players coming into the market. A lot of startups. Actually, my old division manager ended up leaving to go to a startup, so we still work together pretty closely. But just to target some of the smaller landfills, like the one that we have over in Crittenden County, it is something that, once again, we had an asset that's sitting here that we're just kind of burning off fuel to, and now we have an ability to refine it instead of doing that and just kind of plug it into the, like I said, the sciencey process that I won't get into. But just to give you an idea, so Archaea is the company that runs our gas to energy plants at both our north and south facilities, and they are owned now. They got bought out by BP last year. So if British Petroleum is getting into the space, then you can kind of see that there's a future in it.
Yeah, that's good news. Okay, next question. I don't live in Memphis, but I'm curious if you recycle glass. If not, what would it take to make that economically feasible?
So, and that is a great question, and that's one that we get all the time. And I still do. I know that some cities have it to where you cannot throw glass away. Once again, we will take it at our facility. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about before of the viability of processes of the third parties that we send these things to. So when I first started at the company, we were taking our glass here in Memphis and sending it to Strategic, different company, but they were actually down in Houston, which didn't make any kind of economic sense or like sustainability sense to send our glass all the way down there. And then we were actually paying to get rid of it. So we started beneficially reusing it. Surprisingly, glass is very good for road base. So we started using that when we build our roads over at the landfills. So there was a beneficial reuse to it. But we have talked to a company over in Arkansas. We're hopefully going to do a site visit with them here pretty soon. But they do have a process to refine glass down into almost like a lava rock that's been approved to be used in interstate rebuilding over in Arkansas. So you get these things that happen, and you may send some test loads, you may send some loads over, and then it still just depends: is the process sustainable? Is the company going to make it? And then all of a sudden, you could be back in a place where there's kind of no use for it. So glass is recyclable, and to your point, I think it's just about finding that process that not only is sustainable, but kind of has that long-term viability to keep taking what we can send them. So if this one works really well in Arkansas, then they will be taking all of our glass from there. But right now, we're beneficially reusing it at the landfills until then.
Next question. What percentage of recycled material is diverted to the landfill due to contamination?
About 35 to 40%. And so this is another reason why I love doing the tours. So like I said, take everybody through that presentation first, and then we go actually walk out on the floor, and you kind of see exactly what I'm talking about. So you see a lot of bags, you see, garden hoses, clothes, a lot of those different things that are contaminated that could never really make it through the system. About, like I said, 35 to 40% is getting back into the compactor and heading over to the landfill.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, do laundry bottles need to be rinsed out?
That would be ideal. Once again, we're not looking for things to be spick and span. If we can just kind of like rinse out most of the residue from them. I will say laundry bottles are better than milk jugs. So it doesn't need to be as clean as we would ask you to get a milk jug. But yeah, it would be ideal if we could rinse those out.
Okay. Are foil packets that my tea bags come in recyclable?
No, and that's what I was saying before. It's the foil piece that just kind of breaks down. But like we said, aluminum, and it sucks because we do want aluminum because it is such a valuable commodity and always stays pretty stable. But yeah, aluminum cans and then tin and things like that are probably the best things that make it through the system.
Okay. Okay, these two questions are related. Are 1 and 2 the only recyclable plastics? And what are the plastic numbers that are recyclable?
So at this point, I know, so we were taking 1 through 7 for a while. I can't remember if there's anything over that, but now that our polymer center is up and going, I mean, we really don't have to be as diligent as far as separating out the plastics. One of the things that we were focused more on doing here on site was separating those ourselves, because we would sell different kind of plastics and the purity mattered in those bales. Now they've actually taken that process and we're separating plastics out, but we're baling a lot more things together and sending it directly to the polymer center. So I hope that answers your question, as long as it's not a dirty food container. And once again, if it rule of thumb over 2 inches, like for anything that you're trying to recycle, because you can just imagine anything else is probably going to either fall through or get chewed up somehow. So even though shredded paper and things like that are recyclable, there actually is a use for them, we would need items like that in bulk rather than single stream.
So nothing tiny in the recycling. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think, okay, this is interesting. What about tin cans, like soup cans?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Any metal can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why can't they make the numbers on plastics bigger? Why hide them?
That would have been a question for when I worked at PepsiCo. Like, I probably could have answered that one, or at least asked somebody that. But that is a great question.
It really is. Okay, and you already answered this. Can shredded paper be recycled? Maybe you should clarify.
Yeah, and so we have a document shredding company that comes by and picks up our shredding. If we're getting things like shredded paper in bulk, like absolutely, there are places that will take that. But once again, if we're running it through the single stream system, the chances of us actually being able to capture that and then bail it up and send it out are fairly limited.
So what do people do with shredded paper, like from their shredder? I think that there is another kind of facility which takes that, right?
So I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I know of the commercial shredding companies that actually take that. I can remember plastic bags, like the sacks that you get from Kroger or Walmart. Like, you can take those back to those places. Binghamton Development Corporation here in town will take your mattresses and styrofoam. So they take that directly at their facility. I don't know about non-commercial shredded paper though. That is a good question. But yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah,
I'll have to figure that part out.
Yeah. Here is a comment and a question. So, great program. You guys do a great job, and I'm so glad you guys take our recyclable materials. Used tires are an issue. A large number are dumped all over Memphis. Do people bring used tires to your facility? If so, what do you tell them to do?
So funnily enough, like I was saying about the metal, and we have our own metal recycling can outside of our recyclery, and then sometimes at our landfills as well. It's the same with used tires. And to your point, like, those are a big problem. And that's still been one of those that we've got companies like Liberty Tire Recycler, who's actually who we take our tires to. And then there's Memphis Tire Recyclers too, that I think are fairly new, but it still kind of comes down to that scalability of how much can you take? Can you take that steady stream? And I don't know if we're there yet. But to your point, even if you bring them to the landfill, we're taking them over and then putting those in a container to take to a tire recycler. But like I said, Liberty Tire and Memphis Tire Recyclers are two places where we can take them. And then funnily enough, tires and mattresses, we don't want them in a landfill because they can't compact and they just become leachate problems. They hold leachate in them, and that can leak out the side of the hill, which obviously has stormwater issues. So we don't want those in there, but they also float, which is super weird. So I think it's just kind of like the shaking of the landfill that pushes them up to the top. And so I can remember somebody telling me that, and then I walked across the top of the landfill in a place where nobody had been, and there's tires up here, and I'm like, who threw this up here? But yeah, now so we to your point, I know it's an issue that that the city of Memphis is trying to solve as well, but it's still just one of those things where we're trying to catch up.
So people should not put their tires in the recycling bin then.
No, not recycling for sure.
Okay. And I think, well, maybe not. Questions keep coming. What can you recycle the thinner, clear plastics like the used in packaging and product?
You're talking about like the stuff that you cut open, like you can throw that stuff in. Once again, a lot of what we have kind of said in the past is changing a little bit as we're figuring out even what we can send to the polymer centers. But as long as it's not a dirty food container or something that's smaller than 2 inches with basically the size of a credit card, toss it.
Oh, okay.
In the recycling.
All right. Well, I'm glad to know some packaging can go in. That's great. I'm going to do the last question, and then I'm coming back to one that's pretty fun. Okay. Is Republic Service all the recycled drop-off, roll-off bins around town? Oh, is Republic servicing all the recycled drop-off, roll-off bins?
Drop-off.
Around town, at the Agri Center in Harbortown.
Oh, not to mind. We do have some bins that we service. I think the city does service some of the other ones. So if it's single stream or even material that's being separated, it's going to come to us whether we're the ones picking that up or not. But somebody's picking that up. The Agri Center, I believe, might be the city, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And here's a great question. Awesome information. Can I get a little garbage truck for my grandson? He loves him a big garbage truck and crew when they come by.
100%. So we actually do have those on our company website. If you wouldn't mind leaving your contact information, I can work that out.
I think you see in the little trucks behind you.
Yeah, those are actually our die cast trucks. So they release like limited edition every year. So even within the company, like we have to fight each other to get those. But we do have, like, I have a 6-year-old and I got him one of the plastic roll-off trucks that he could play with because he doesn't like the die cast ones for some reason.
Okay, well that's great. And then finally, someone wrote in that said Oxford, Mississippi needs to catch up. They can only recycle 1 and 2 and no glass. But thanks for a great talk.
Thank you.
And I would like to reiterate that. Thank you so much, Jason. It's been a pleasure as always. I guess I will see you soon for another presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me, Kathy.
And I'm going to turn us over to Eric, who's going to take us out. Talk to you later.
Well, thank you, Jason. We really do appreciate it. This is always a looked forward to presentation each year from Republic Services, and I appreciate what y'all do for the community. Memphis is lucky to have Republic Services here, working within the community to offer recycling services. That's not every community has that, as we've heard about down there in Oxford. So thank you. And I want to remind all of our viewers that this Saturday, again, September 20th, we're doing our Hike Above the Ghost. And on November 8th, we're hosting our annual Greenway Soiree. Information about both events, which we'd love to have you join us for, can be found at wolfriver.org. Thanks once again to our special guest, Jason West from Republic Services. And thank you to everyone who stayed with us and viewed this excellent program. Have a great night.